French President Francois Hollande is facing pressure in his own country now to seek his parliament's authorization to join in a U.S.-led campaign. Arthel.
James Rosen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, a Massachusetts case challenging a key part of the Pledge of Allegiance is making its way to the state's highest court as one atheist couple fights to remove the phrase "under God." Fox 25 reporter Sharman Scaretti has our report from Boston.
Every day before school starts, children stand up and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Now an Acton family is trying to get the words "under God" removed from the pledge, and they're taking the Acton-Boxborough School District to court to do it.
Every day these kids go to school and the pledge is recited declaring that the nation is in fact under God. That marginalizes them. That suggests that people who don't believe in God are less patriotic.
The plaintiffs are named Jane and John Doe out of concern for what they call public hostility. Their children listed as ages 13, 11, and 9. Their lawyer describes them as atheists and humanists. They say they don't have a problem reciting the pledge, just the term "under God." The school district argues the pledge is entirely voluntary.
The school system has to respect that at some point parents and children can in fact opt out of things that they find to be, for their own reason, inappropriate. And the school system respects that.
The superintendent says the district has so far spent $10,000 on this case, and he hopes the judge dismisses it.
This business that of marginalizing students, there is absolutely no recrimination, no negative consequence ever against a child that chooses not to say the pledge, or in this particular case, simply say the pledge and not say the words "under God."
Back in 1954, under then-President Eisenhower, Congress added the words "under God" to the pledge in response to communism and the Cold War. The Washington, D.C.-based Becket Fund for Religious Liberty argues not saying the words "under God" is discriminatory.
What they're asking for would silence other people. They're not asking for the right to opt out. They have that right. They admit that they have that right. They're trying to get other people to shut up.
All right, let's talk about it. Dan Shore joins us. Former prosecutor Dominic Romano is a New York attorney. Gentlemen, good to see you. So, I mean, the nation's highest court has dealt with the issue of God and the Pledge of Allegiance before, have they not?
Right, and the prior suits have generally been about the separation of church and state. This is interesting because there's different grounds. They're bringing it under the Massachusetts state equal rights laws, and they're saying that it violates their equal rights. It's not a religious liberty argument.
Yeah. You know, Dominic, 9 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court had a nearly identical case, and they booted it essentially on procedural grounds. They didn't decide it on the merits. So this time around, this particular Massachusetts case could really have import.
It could, but like Dan said, they're attacking it from a different angle, equal protection rather than the freedom of religion. It's interesting, a lot of people don't realize, as your segment pointed out, that it wasn't always that way. Those words "under God" weren't always there. It was during the Cold War, in contrast to atheist Russia, that the President and Congress added those words into the pledge. So what these people are asking is for a restoration back to the original language.
Well, but take it to its logical extent, Dan. I mean, could it also remove "In God We Trust" on the dollar bill?
They could bring a suit for that. I think the key part here that's going to hurt the plaintiffs is that it's voluntary, that they don't have to say it. And if you just look at current law and prior cases, it's hard to find a precedent for their case. They are bringing it under the equal rights law, which was used by the Massachusetts High Court to legalize same-sex marriage by a 4-3 vote a few years ago. So they're trying to say that under the same legal theory, this violates their equal rights.
Yeah. I wonder whether this will work its way beyond the Massachusetts state lines into the U.S. Supreme Court. It's a completely different court now than it was 9 years ago.
You're right, it could, and this decision could set off others similar. But I think there's a distinction between, like you mentioned, the dollar bill or the pledge. In the pledge, it's something historically that we don't go back as many years, and it doesn't really need to be there if you think about it. I was raised Catholic. I was taught by the Christian Brothers in a Catholic high school. I happen to have no problem saying those words, but some people do. What kind of a country do we want? Do we want a country where different faiths are respected? Why do those words need to be in that pledge? I think that's what this whole argument is about.
Yeah, and it's different because on the dollar bill and other symbols throughout the nation, the word God is used. And the Supreme Court in past cases has said, okay, that's permissible because it's tradition, it's not religion. This is a recitation of words. Is there a difference?
Well, one of the questions that the lower court, which sided with the defendants, addressed was whether is this a prayer or is this just a recitation about a pledge to the country that happens to have a couple of religious words in it. That's really the defining issue here. So far, past cases have not been on the side of the plaintiff, but they are bringing a new legal theory here, so we'll have to see what happens.
What do you think is going to happen?
It could go either way, but
Really?
if,
Is that close?
I think if the words are removed, we wouldn't be a weaker country because of it.
All right. You agree?
I think it's unclear. It's a new legal theory, and I'm really not sure how it's going to go at this point.
All right. Dan Shore, Dominic Romano, good to see you both. Thanks so much. Arthel?
All right, Greg, thank you. Well, more coverage of the crisis in Syria coming up and the possibility of U.S. military action in the Middle East. We're live at the White House as President Obama prepares to meet with 2 leading Republican senators. And North Korea backing out of a planned meeting with a special U.S. envoy as we try to seek the release of an American facing 15 years in a North Korean prison. A look at why coming up next.